The first reactions to Beyond the Spider-Verse just dropped, and people who were in that room at CinemaCon are calling it the best animation they've ever seen. Not the best Spider-Verse film. The best animated visuals they have ever seen. Period. Rotten Tomatoes critic Rosa Pera said it flat out surpasses both previous films and that her eyes were still processing what she witnessed. Andrew Salazar from Discussing Film called out Spider-Punk's Dimension specifically as some of the best visuals this team has ever produced. And Coy Jandreau from Real Rejects, who watched the first 3 to 4 minutes of the actual film in full, came out talking about Full Body Chills and said this trilogy is likely his favorite of all time. 3 words he used: sensational, spectacular, and amazing. Those are literally Spider-Man adjectives, and at this point, I don't think that's a coincidence. None of this is from a public trailer. The footage is not dropped online yet. These are reactions from industry people who were in the room, and they're unanimous. That matters because this film has had a complicated road getting here. After Across the Spider-Verse ended in 2023, Miles trapped on Earth 42, his father 2 days from dying, his friends having not chosen him. Sony went quiet. Dates moved. The silence stretched long enough that Beyond started feeling like one of those projects that exists permanently on the horizon. Development issues on something this ambitious are expected, but the wait was real. CinemaCon is the first time the team has shown up with actual footage and said, here's what we've built. And based on the reactions, what they've built is something. The footage was shot in a 1.43:1 aspect ratio, specifically for IMAX. Premium large format presentation that no film in this trilogy has attempted before. That's not a small decision. It tells you everything about the scale they're operating at now. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were on stage alongside directors Bob Persichetti and Justin Thompson, and the way they described this film was the final chapter of Miles' story, not another chapter. The final one. So let's get into what was actually shown. The footage opens exactly where Across left off. Miles is on Earth 42, restrained, being interrogated by that universe's version of Uncle Aaron. Then the Earth 42 Miles drops in, the one who never became Spider-Man because in that dimension there was no Spider-Man and never had been. He became the Prowler instead. The two of them square off, and our Miles is trying to explain that his father has 2 days to live. The Earth 42 version has no reason to care. What this scene is doing goes beyond setup. Miles has spent 2 full films figuring out who he is, resisting every version of himself that other people tried to assign to him, and now the film opens with him physically fighting a version of himself built by a world with no heroism in it, no mentor, no legacy, no Spider-Man to look up to. Earth 42 Miles became the Prowler because that's what his environment produced. The contrast between these 2 kids is the argument of the entire trilogy made into a fist fight. Miles charges his bioelectric Venom Blast, breaks free, and a getaway van comes flying over a rising bridge. Gwen, Spider-Ham, Spider-Noir, Peter B, Spider-Punk, and 2 characters nobody has identified yet. Every film in this series has introduced faces that became instant fan favorites, so 2 unknown newcomers in that van is a real open question, not just a footnote. The official synopsis describes Miles as hunted by Spider Society and betrayed by his friends. That second part is where it stings. At the end of Across, Gwen and the others were caught between Miles and the entire institutional logic of Miguel's organization. That logic had been built into them as survival instinct. They didn't choose Miles. The rescue scene in the opening is a start, but that fracture doesn't heal in one moment. Rebuilding those relationships while racing against Jefferson's death is the emotional core this film is working from. Jefferson Davis is the clock the whole movie runs on. And one of the most visually distinct things in the sizzle reel is a retro-styled flashback showing a young Jefferson and a young Aaron together before their lives split apart. The aesthetic is completely different from anything else in the film. Grittier, more analog, rooted in a different era. This is the first time this story has actually been shown rather than referenced. We know Jefferson became a cop and Aaron ended up working for Kingpin and died for it in the first film. We've never seen the moment of divergence. My read on why this flashback is in the finale specifically is this. The Spot has already decided he's going to kill Jefferson. That's the mission statement of Beyond. But to make the audience feel the full weight of that threat, the film needs them to understand who Jefferson is beyond just being Miles' dad. Showing a young Jefferson at the exact point where he could have gone either way and chose right makes the stakes land harder. If he dies, Miles loses his father and loses the proof that making the right choice actually matters. That flashback isn't backstory padding, it's load-bearing. On the spot, Jason Schwartzman's arc across this franchise doesn't get enough credit. He was introduced in Across as a visual joke. Miles was practically bored fighting him in the early scenes. Then the film spent 2 hours showing him absorb portal energy from dimension after dimension until by the end he had become something genuinely threatening. He told Miles he was going to kill his father. Not as a monologue, as a statement of fact, and left. That build from punchline to credible threat worked because the film never underlined it. The report from CinemaCon is that his moment in the sizzle reel silenced the room. That's the right response for a villain in a closing chapter. There's also a silhouette shot of Kingpin, where the visual language apparently echoes the spot's dimensional effects, their imagery being deliberately connected. Liev Schreiber is back voicing the character who set the entire first film in motion. Kingpin in the comics has always operated through other people's power. He finds leverage and uses it. Whether he's directing the Spot, funding him, or somehow being used by him is exactly the kind of layered antagonist setup this franchise has earned the right to pull off. Miguel O'Hara shows up in the sizzle reel in a completely different suit. Black and white. More armored. More angular. This is not a surprise if you were paying close attention to Across, because character designer Chris Anka confirmed this suit was deliberately hidden in the background of Miguel's lab in that film as an intentional Easter egg. The filmmakers had this plan before they even finished the second movie. The in-universe logic writes itself. Miles hit Miguel with a full bioelectric shock at the end of Across and fried his suit, so Miguel switched to the backup. But the suit is reportedly being filmed as more sinister, which tracks with where his arc is going. Miguel is not a straightforward villain. He built an entire system around necessary sacrifice and has been both right and wrong about what that costs. A harder suit reflecting a harder version of that conviction is the film doing character work visually without stopping to explain it. Nicolas Cage's Spider-Noir appearing in that rescue van is worth flagging because of timing. The live-action Spider-Noir series hits MGM Plus on May 25th and Prime Video 2 days later, weeks from now. Audiences who discover that character through the series will walk into Beyond already invested in him. That overlap is not accidental. Daniel Kaluuya's Spider-Punk is also confirmed in the released images with a real role rather than a cameo, which lines up with what Salazar said about Spider-Punk's dimension producing the best visuals in the footage. Chris Miller said Beyond is the most emotional Spider-Verse film yet. The first film ended with Miles becoming Spider-Man and losing his uncle in the same story. The second ended with betrayal, isolation, and a scheduled death. If this one goes further than both, the script by Dave Callaham, alongside Lord and Miller, is not easing up before the finish line. June 18th, 2027 is the date, almost exactly a decade after Into the Spider-Verse came out and reset what people thought animation was allowed to do. The Spider-Noir series drops in weeks, brand new day is coming, but Beyond is the one carrying the weight of everything these three films have built. A father who has 2 days to live, a version of Miles who became the villain, friendships that broke under pressure, a villain who started as a joke and ended as a threat. All of it lands in one film. Based on what just came out of Las Vegas, they're ready. And I want to know what you think. Drop your theory in the comments. Is Jefferson actually going to survive this, or does Miles lose his father and the trilogy ends on that? And which Spider-Man do you want to see in that van as one of the 2 unknowns? I'll be reading every single one. If this video was useful, subscribe. More Spider-Verse coverage is coming as we get closer to 2027.